Hello, podcast listeners. Crack a cold one because we're going to be talking about soda during this episode of JJ Meets World. And when we talk about soda, we cover just about everything. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage. If you're a Pepsi drinker, you'll like Tucker. If you're a Coke drinker, you'll like me. If you're sitting there with your Mr. Pibb, go listen to Mark Maron's podcast instead. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I love that I see a bag of potatoes and at least
these are for you.
Two finished Diet
These
Cokes.
aren't, they're both
half
opens.
empty.
Yeah. Let's make sure to keep this in the actual episode.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is the good stuff.
Yeah.
No, I opened a Diet Coke at work on Friday and didn't finish it.
Yeah.
But I also had a Diet Coke I was working on the way here today. So I intend to finish both of these, but I have a third just in case.
Why? Dust has got to be an issue. Dust has got to be an issue, JJ. Unless you're capping your can in some way.
I tend to put a piece of paper on top of it because I've wondered that same thing. Now, that being said, not much of dust accumulates in less than 48 hours.
But a significant amount. I mean, more than zero.
I am not.
And it's going to
underneath-
depend on where you are.
Right. Like if I'm in a.
Look at this drop ceiling we're underneath here right now.
Right,
Things
and
come
so-
off that all the time.
No.
Yes, they do.
No. We keep things clean here. And actually,
In this like 50-year-old building.
and interestingly enough, our vents don't send air down, they take air up. And so like new air is brought in a different way because that way it's not blowing onto microphones.
Yeah.
So if
That's a good point. Oh, that's a good point.
So if anything, it's taking the dust out. And so if you look around the air exchanger, it's real gross, but I don't put stuff underneath it. Also, I'm not in a construction zone. We have stopped allowing dogs, so I don't have to worry about dander.
When we've talked about this on the podcast before, but if you're a newer-ish listener,
Which we do have some new listeners, by the way.
JJ has a few ways he prefers his Diet Coke. Absolute numero uno is going to be Diet Coke from McDonald's. But
Correct.
The second one is room temperature and flat.
Yeah, so I open it the night before, and then I chug it when I wake up in the morning.
When did you discover that that's your preferred way? And do you still do that?
So, interestingly enough, this is the evolution of my soda experience because it starts with me drinking Mountain Dew, right, as a kid, right? So
That was your first.
You'd order a Domino's pizza and then you drink Mountain Dew with it. And then
remember your first.
I believe that there was like a small store near our lake cabin, but it only carried Pepsi or Coke products. So we had Mellow Yellow at the lake exclusively. And every now and then a cold Mellow Yellow really hits it. And I remember specifically one time my cousin Andrew and I were on the front porch of my grandpa's lake cabin, and my cousin Andrew's family lived in Arizona, so they would come up for the entire summer and mooch off my grandfather, right? And so he came in and he was carrying 2 12-packs of Mellow Yellow. And this is when they came in they weren't the big, long, rectangular fridge packs. They were the square ones. And he goes, I'm not buying any more of this damn yellow Mellow. And we both were like, you could hear both of our cheeks inflate. And we're like, if we laugh right now, we're going to be in so much trouble. He'll be so mad at us. We'll be cleaning the boathouse. And I loved it. Like when I was a kid, when adults would say something wrong, like Super Mario Brothers. Yeah. Oh God, it was sweet like butter.
Yeah, nothing quite hits like when you get to see like the piss taken out of adults.
Yeah,
and
right.
You're noticing it. You're like, oh wow, what a dummy, right? When that feeling develops.
Feels so good. And it's like, I know something more than you. This is great. So I start with Mountain Dew and Mellow Yellow. Then I transition to Surge. And it was all about the marketing with Surge. The bunch of kids running down an alley, jumping over onto that couch. It aired every day during Channel 1. It was amazing.
It's wild, the like mental image, just seeing the logo conjures. For
Right.
me. Like, and like the time and a place. I am at Horseman Elementary School when I see the Surge logo, even today.
So
I like
good.
the taste of it.
Yeah.
I think it's tasty.
Yeah. Surge is fine. It's just great. And then right around the time of episode 1, I start drinking Diet Pepsi.
The Star Wars.
Star Wars episode 1. Why is that? Because they had the episode 1 cans and I was fully into my Star Wars era of my life. And so I wanted to collect every single one of the cans.
This was Diet Pepsi, you said?
It's Diet Pepsi, yeah. So they made a big deal with Pepsi-Cola to be the official soft drink of Galaxy Far, Far
You
Away.
went from Surge to Diet Pepsi.
To Diet Pepsi, because for a long time, I just didn't drink pop. Like during my
Okay.
high school era, I just wasn't drinking
Oh,
pop.
so there was actually a big break then.
Yeah.
It's not like Surge continued and then you were like, hello, this Diet Pepsi really
Right.
kicks.
I mean, and like what episode? I mean, it's not that long because episode 1 comes out summer of '99.
Yeah, I think so.
So there's maybe like a 2-year gap
Why did you
between
go
Surge and Diet Pepsi.
Why did you go Diet Pepsi versus Pepsi?
Because Diet Pepsi is the one that had the stuff on the cans.
Oh, regular Pepsi didn't?
No. So regular
okay.
Pepsi was doing something different with like they changed their logo a little bit for it, but it was
Yeah.
Diet Pepsi specifically that you could get the character cans.
Okay. Yeah, your drink of choice is really affected by marketing.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate that my bedroom in the basement, at one point I moved out of the actual bedroom and into the living room den space of the basement and took that over as one giant bedroom. And I loved it. It was amazing. It was like having a gigantic master bedroom all to myself. And it's where people congregated, so people were always hanging out. You know, it wasn't weird that everyone was laying on my bed all the time. I kept my room probably the cleanest it's ever been in my life. And my bed was the platform, 2 base platform pieces that were for a water bed, and then a box spring, and then my mattress on top of that. So it was really high up because I'm a tall guy. So I like a tall mattress,
Yep,
right?
yep.
If it's too low and I get off and I've got to like bring myself up
Yeah.
to get there, don't care for that.
Yeah.
So because my mattress is so high, I need a bedside table that's high. But this is at an era where like I'm in high school. What am I going to do? So I take a 12 pack of Diet Pepsi and I put them on the ground strategically, and then I put like a steamer trunk on top of that. And you know what I'm saying with a steamer trunk, right?
Yeah. But
And why do I have that? I don't know.
You're using Diet Pepsi as just to raise the level.
To raise it up that extra 9 inches.
And this
right?
is a box of Diet Pepsi or a bunch of Diet Pepsi?
A bunch of cans. Like, because I take a can and put it at each corner of the steamer trunk and then in the middle to give it like a
these
good
are
solid.
full cans.
Full cans.
Unopened.
They've got to be full unopened cans, yes.
Okay.
And so I graduate from high school in 2002.
That worked?
Yeah.
I would have imagined they would have like at some point like you
No,
were
because-
keeping something up with 4 cans of Diet
No,
Pepsi.
a whole 12 pack.
Oh, a whole
like
12
there's
pack.
12 of these. And when you
Oh,
think
yeah.
about it, you know, the aluminum can itself, like it's pretty sturdy, especially when it's got something inside there. These things
I
are
was
pretty dense.
picturing one at each corner,
Oh.
like a table leg.
Right, and that's how I started, and then I built them. Like I
Interesting.
think I built like an X formation to kind of give it, and also
Interesting.
It, you know, the steamer trunk itself probably weighs 7 pounds.
Okay.
at
Yeah.
most, Right.
No, that makes sense
And
now.
so like then I put an alarm clock on top of it. Graduated from high school in 2002. The fall of 2002, I'm moving out into my first apartment.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, here we go. And my mom was like, you're taking everything. I don't want this. I'm going to reclaim the downstairs.
Yeah.
And so I'm cleaning out everything, and I take the steamer trunk up, and I have forgotten at this point, like, oh yeah,
12 Diet Pepsis
there's
down
12
here.
Diet Pepsis down there. And I was like, I wonder if they're still good. I opened one, took one sip. I thought I was going to Ralph everywhere. It was so awful. And at this point, I had transitioned into drinking Diet Coke. And so the question of, is Diet Pepsi okay? It is not okay,
So-
at all.
So at room temperature flat,
Yeah.
Diet Pepsi. Was it flat? I'm assuming it would be flat.
No, it
Or
still had some carbonation when
Okay,
you
so
opened
it was just warm or room temperature.
Yeah, room temperature. And like you could tell like the ingredients had like separated inside of it.
It had
right?
not been chilled for a very long time.
Correct.
Okay.
And like I think the expiration date was like 2000, and so this is 2 years past the expiration date.
Wouldn't it stand to reason then to try the method you're using for Diet Coke on that, where you're not letting it sit for 2 years before you try to drink it, right? Like you're like Diet Pepsi doesn't work. Well, sure, after like 24 months, but what if you did it the very next day?
It's still not as good.
Okay.
And here's the thing. I actually think the only thing that makes Diet Pepsi palatable is the burn that you get from the, because it's extremely carbonated compared to, compared to Coke products. Even now, my body is having a visceral reaction to the idea of drinking. And I chose a Padme can, if you want to know which character I chose to drink from. Little Natalie Portman action there. So
was she in full Amidala, or was she?
No, it was as Padme.
As Padme.
Yeah. Okay. Because at that time, you didn't want the can to ruin what was going on in the like premise of the film. Like you don't want any spoilers from your can. So. And then at one point, I think my mom starts drinking Diet Coke, but my mom has maybe a soda every like 3 weeks. And so, but that becomes the thing that just is in the house, right?
Right.
Diet Coke.
It goes with a lot of alcohol.
It does.
Right.
And when like my mom was a brandy Diet Pepsi lady. And so there's a reason why I think I also hate Diet Pepsi because of that, because of my mom's alcoholism.
Yes.
So Diet Coke becomes like the thing. And then I have never looked back ever since. Now, I flirted, of course, with things like, a squirt here and there, and that's fine. There was a summer where Natalie LaPlante, formerly Natalie Deutsch, got me to drink a lot of Big K brand orange soda, which was, I think, the Kmart brand of orange soda, and you could get it at a convenience store near me. And there was something like wrong with the formula. It tasted amazing, but if you drank like 2 of them, your back started to hurt. And I was like,
right.
I was like,
that's right. I forgot about that.
Like
an effect on your spinal fluid.
Yeah, I was thinking like, or maybe like your liver is swelling and like, but like it tasted so good. And then of course, there was an era where I drank Jones soda, a summer where Jones
soda.
Right?
Like I'd always get like a vanilla something or whatever.
Yeah, I think I was like the green apple or something like that. And that was a big thing to drive around and drink Jones soda. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Look at the cool pictures on the side of it. This is the voice of a new generation.
You got to know that there were Jones soda bottle collections living in basements somewhere, and I wonder if any of those exist today.
I bet you there's. I know Jill has at least one. So you could at one point send in your own photo, and they would send you a 6-pack of soda with your photo on it. And so she has one with like a bunch of her friends on it that, which is neat. It's a neat little idea.
When one of them dies, does she drink that one?
She should, right? Like she's drinking God, this cranberry isn't good anymore.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my soda evolution throughout time.
Interesting. I don't remember when it started, but it was early on. At some point, I tasted Pepsi. I think it would have been probably at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
And it was the soda that was always being paired with pizza. Because
Pizza Hut was a Pepsi?
I think so. I could be totally wrong. They were at one point.
I feel like the red cups always meant that you were Coke.
No, I could be wrong. But, here's the thing. They were at one point because I remember it was Pizza Hut pizza that I realized I liked dunking my pizza crusts into Pepsi.
Okay.
And so at some point...
You're a monster.
Yeah, I know. But I'm comfortable with that.
Yep.
I'm at peace with it. So I think it was probably some sort of a correlation with pizza. But I realized that I really genuinely love the taste of Pepsi. I do not like the taste of Coca-Cola at all. Not that it's disgusting, but I just drink and go, okay, I don't want any more of that. And Diet Coke has become the drink I have on airplanes.
Oh, really?
For some reason, I associate airplane. Well, every time I'm on an airplane and they go, here's like the 3 soda options we have, Diet Coke sounds like the best one out of all of them. And so I just sip that, or I go with coffee and scare the person sitting next to me when we get into turbulence. But
it was going to spill the coffee all over him. Oh, yeah. God.
But I very much was a sort of in this order Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and then probably like a Surge or a Mountain. Probably Surge. I like Surge more than I like Mountain Dew.
Did you ever drink some Surge when they brought it back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's still, you can still, I believe, get it on.
Yeah, you
some
can.
level,
Yeah.
right? So like, I like that. That's a drink that I hope I always have access to for the rest of my life.
Surge was
Even
our
though I don't drink it very
generation's
much.
Jolt Cola.
Yeah.
Because there was a promise that it was ultra caffeinated.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I remember, God, it was such a crazy time for us to be growing up in like the 90s and like the massive rise and diversification of like all these different soda products that were coming out, because there was like urban legends with Jolt about kids dying from it.
Yeah, and like you had to go to Moorhead.
You go to Moorhead to get it. You can't get it here in Fargo. Oh shit, I'm drinking Jolt in Fargo. OK Soda, you know, these sodas that sort of erupted into the popular culture, attempting to be like another alternative to Coke or Pepsi.
There should be a documentary about the advertising that went into sodas in the 90s, because there are so many things that came, you know, take it like the company that came up with Pepsi Points, and like that Pepsi Point thing. There's a great little mini documentary about the guy who, there's a commercial where it's like, you know, this Pepsi jacket, 100 Pepsi points.
Yeah.
And then there was like a Harrier jet that like comes and it says 700,000 Pepsi points.
Oh.
And then a guy found out that like you can actually buy Pepsi points for a certain amount. Like if you wanted to get the jacket, but you know, like for $4 extra, you can actually get the jacket. And he found out that the price of a Harrier jet was like $3.8 million, but the price to buy 700,000 Pepsi points was only like $280,000. So he got enough people together and they essentially like they bought these things, and so he writes to Pepsi. He's like, "Here's my 700,000 Pepsi points. I'd like my jet, please." And they're like, "Well, yeah, that was just a joke. Have you heard about this?"
No, I've never.
This is a true story.
This is phenomenal. It
So-
sounds like Punch Drunk Love.
It does. That's one of the things that inspired Punch Drunk
Okay.
Love, right? His like figuring out you can fly, you can get unlimited miles that bank on top of miles. So
Yeah.
you just got to buy all these like lean cuisines.
Yeah, something like or pudding or something. Yeah.
So, so this guy, and then he sues Pepsi at one point because he's like,
He probably knew that would be
Right.
Like, okay,
Ultimately-
when they here's the opening they've left.
Right.
Here's how we get this lawsuit. Fucking brilliant.
and so Pepsi says like, we don't have a Harrier jet, and he's like, well, then you better get a hold of one. And they're like, the government owns all of the Harrier jets. Like these aren't something for the consumer. So they end up getting in this big legal battle, and I can't remember what happens. I think the guy was made whole in some way. Like they give him something. He doesn't get a jet, and he doesn't get the full value of the jet or anything like that. But they have to change the commercial. They change it to like 7 billion Pepsi points or something, and then they have a disclaimer. But it changes advertising for the rest of time. Whereas like you can't do these things that say you can win this prize. If you can't actually win the prize, they have to have some kind of a disclaimer
Yep.
involved in it. And so that case is referenced on a regular basis across the board.
That's wild.
Then Pepsi also, did you know that Pepsi at one point had the biggest navy of any country in the world?
I think this I have.
Yeah. So Russia comes to Pepsi and they're like, oh, we need the soda pops in Russia. It's good for us. Yes, fun times. It's way more Borat.
That's
Comrade. So Pepsi makes a deal where they essentially are going to flood Russia with Pepsi products because Russia was trying to become a little more like Americanized in some ways and to show that the Cold War is over. And so Pepsi ends up sending all this stuff. Well, they can't pay their bill. Like Russia as a country like backed this thing, but they're not paying their bill. And so they're like, we have no money. And so what do? They give them a bunch of battleships that they have that's worth approximately what it was. And so Russia had the largest standing navy at the time. And so as soon as they gave all these things away, Pepsi for like 3 months had the biggest standing navy. And essentially they piecemealed and they sold it off to anyone who wanted to buy warships of any kind. And so there are little tiny countries that never could afford something like this who now all of a sudden it's like, thanks, Pepsi.
I wonder what kind of. I want to learn more about this because, like, I could totally see the U.S. government going, "Hey, Pepsi, guess what you're doing right now? So if you're going to do this, we get our cut, and this is who you can and cannot sell these to, right? Or even just like You can sell it to them, but you have to break it first, right? You have to take away. You have to take the guns off, or something
Right.
like that. That's
you have
wild.
to replace it with things that squirt Pepsi. You know. And so it's like these
Pepsi guns.
They're the Pepsi fun ships, you know, like they're all over the Philippines, the Pepsi fun ships, and they're painted to look like, you know, big Pepsi cans. You know, I mean, why not, right? You know, why not? It is fascinating to me, though, that the stranglehold that the soda companies have on our country and like on the world in general, because. Coca-Cola is the most recognized brand in the entire world.
I would not
and
be
you
surprised.
find it on every single continent.
I would not be surprised that that's the case. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would assume so. It's been around the longest of all the major brands that are currently that look that way, right?
Correct.
That have maintained basically the same brand. Like the idea
Uncle Jemima's, like, you know, like Rootin' Tootin' soda doesn't like really exist.
Yeah, let's
even though
put it
it's
this
big.
way. If Coca-Cola decided to change their logo or their brand in some way, that would be the most seismic shift in advertising that has happened in the history of modern advertising.
You mean like New Coke?
No, I mean like the
No, I
Coca-Cola,
know, but
right?
like that. I mean, that was the thing, right? Is
Right.
Coke actually changed their logo after that to Coca-Cola, and then working the word classic into
okay.
it.
Yeah.
and like Coke has slowly changed. Like Pepsi, I think, has done drastic changes
Oh,
to its
yeah,
logo,
they've done so many
like
now
over
that-
and over and over again.
They've done so many now that I still prefer the original. Just like I prefer, or I should say, there's a time in it that I prefer, but there's like the Marvel and DC logos. You know, I have very specific ones from the times when I was reading those comics as a kid that I'm like, well, no, that's the DC logo. Everything else is just some weird iteration or play on it, but it's like, but that's the actual logo in my heart, and I just want them all to go back to it and go, let's just clean this up. What is it about these logo refreshes that you feel fuel sales, especially for Coke or Pepsi? I don't know. Like, you either like one or you like the other.
Right. And I think that, excuse me, you can settle on one or the other in a pinch.
Right.
So, like, for example, my local movie theater is a Pepsi place, right?
Right.
So I drink Pepsi when I go see a movie.
You drink Diet Pepsi, right?
I drink Diet Pepsi, yeah. Because I can't drink Pepsi or Coke. It is so sweet to me that it is just unpalatable.
Do they still offer Diet Pepsi with lime?
No. In fact, that was Diet Coke with lime. I don't think Diet Pepsi ever had a lime
did it
option.
not? Oh,
Diet
okay.
Pepsi for sure had a lemon. They had Diet Pepsi
okay.
with lemon.
Yeah, you're right.
But I don't think they ever did a lime. I think that was, and then Diet Coke. And that was an era for me too, when you and I lived
Yeah.
in North Fargo together. I was drinking, and like I've gone back and like tasted that again, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awful.
Right.
This is not a good flavor.
Right.
But-
Just like when I go and taste Blue UV vodka, I'm like, what was I
Yep.
thinking?
Right. Yep. No. There's an era for everything, don't you think? But like even the aspect of like Coca-Cola, when the pop wars begin and they decide you want a bigger market share, right? All the time you want a bigger market share, you have bigger market share. The amount of money they spend advertising a product that is already the most well-known product on the planet is amazing. In the movie Election, they talk about how Coca-Cola like outspends Pepsi like $1 to $2 on every like advertising campaign, and it's for the idea that you want to stay front of mind, right? You never want to give that up, and the second you start to rest on your laurels, it's the reason why they spend billions of dollars rolling out Santa packs every year to get you to think of like the holidays and associate the holidays with your drink.
Well, and I think going back to what you were talking about like the global cultural impact, I mean, largely how we view Santa Claus today.
Is because of Coca-Cola. Yes.
Right.
Their imagery.
Yeah. And I mean, that has permeated pop culture of the entire planet. No other soda has had that level of impact.
Right. Santa packs are coming. Santa packs are coming. Always Coca-Cola.
I would like to just say that, we've been talking about, we've got the big two, and then there's always that third who's trying
God,
to take
don't talk about
dominance.
Tab.
No. I think that's really where Dr. Pepper lives.
Oh, yes.
And I have to say this was our friend, the Bill Stiller, who I heard coin this for the first time, and it stuck with me forever, is he refers to Dr. Pepper as barbecue Pepsi. And I think that is pitch perfect. I think that is correct. This is Pepsi with barbecue sauce, and that's why I like it so much. Also, whenever I see Dr. Pepper, I think of our friend of the podcast, Mike Schultz, who we haven't had on in a long time. We should get him and Valerie here at some point to talk about.
He's having good adventures.
He's having good adventures, as is she, becoming the voice of puzzling.
Right.
So when we were years ago, when we were making Lumberjill with Summer Hagen, he was my assistant director when we were shooting. And this was in the wintertime, and he loves Dr. Pepper. That's his drink of choice. And so he would always have Dr. Pepper on him wherever we would go, but we were bundled up in winter gear, right? So you wouldn't see him walking around with the Dr. Pepper because he would be keeping it like in a jacket pocket or something as he's going around. And we would go to different locations outside, and I wouldn't see him do this, but he would take his Dr. Pepper out and he would put it in a snowbank to chill it a bit before drinking it, right? Like usually near where we're filming. And so there would be all these moments where, I'm in the middle of directing, and then I look over and I see Mike walk up to a snowbank and just reach his hand in
Like
and
some kind of magic.
and pull a full Dr. Pepper out. And it created the illusion in my mind that he had just cachets of Dr. Pepper like throughout all the snowbanks everywhere. And I think about that a lot. Every time I see Dr. Pepper, I think, I found Mike's cachet of Dr. Pepper.
I love that. And you know what? I feel like Dr. Pepper drinkers are so brand loyal that that's all they want, right? Do you know that Dr. Pepper was originally meant to be drunk warm?
I believe so. Yeah.
Like it was
or even hot. Right?
Yeah. It was like a hot drink.
Yeah.
It was a replacement for like coffee.
Oh,
and
yeah. Okay.
That grosses me out to no end. And I tried it once. I tried hot Dr. Pepper and like, no, thank you.
I can't think of a single soda I would want hot.
One of my favorite soda stories is when I was in high school, I had my Mountaineer, my green Mercury Mountaineer. Loved that car. And in the back, I'd always have snacks, right? So I'd always have like a big thing of cheese balls or something like that because my car was a car we cruised around in a lot. I believe your van, the Mystery Machine, was kind of your version of that, like in North Fargo. And one summer, I was rehearsing a show at the FMCT for Trollwood because the Trollwood had teamed up with them for space. And it was like 95 degrees out. And Jared Nillis grabbed a Coca-Cola from the back of my buffet that I had in the back of my car. And he takes a sip. And when a carbonated beverage is that hot, it really like ultra carbonates itself. So he takes a sip and like turns to us and immediately foam shoots out of his mouth like a gun. And he like, and then so like, and it just won't stop coming. Like his throat is just like filling up with fizz. And I was with Dustin and Natalie at the time, and we couldn't stop laughing. And we're like, we're trying to say, "Are you okay?" And that just wouldn't come out. Like we couldn't get the words out to say, like, "Are you all right? Are you going to be all right?" Instead, we just have this wonderful long-term laugh at him. And also, I was like, that must have hurt. And like he couldn't speak for like an hour. Like his voice was like so like, oh my God. It was just delightful. I worked with a guy a long time ago, a construction dude, when I was doing commercial kitchens. We were building the new commercial kitchen that was in the new Grand Forks Airport. And the dude's name was Kevin. And Kevin had a sad story because he had been living out like in Montana, living his best life, and his dad got ill back here in Fargo. So he had come back to Fargo, and he was like probably like in his early 50s, and he had come back to help his dad. And the first day he was back in Fargo, his car started on fire and burned down, and all of his tools were in it, and it was not insured. So he lost everything. He was a carpenter, so his livelihood gone. So now he's got to work with this punk kid, like installing stainless steel and ripping like paper off. And so every day we would leave the Grand Forks Airport and drive towards I-29, and there was like a Simonson gas station. We'd go in there, and he'd get a 2-liter of Pepsi, of Diet Pepsi, and he'd drink from that 2-liter, and then he'd turn to me and he'd go, "Oh, I love the burn." And that's what the thing was. Like, he loved the burn on his throat the whole way down. And I was like, I don't know. Now, I think he had a heart attack and died like a year later, which is sad. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Kevin, the construction guy that I don't remember your last name. So I can't find your grave. I can't go and drop some Diet Pepsi on your grave if I really want to.
You got to go pour one out.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But it always amazes me because I do love the carbonation in Diet Coke, but you know what I hate? Carbonated water.
Yeah, the worst.
Disgusting,
Never.
right?
Get that away from me. I don't understand. Water is my favorite drink.
Yeah.
I love ice water. It's just the absolute best. Then it's black coffee. Then it's Pepsi. But so like absolutely no acid, and then the most acid you could possibly think of. But carbonated water is an absolute atrocity. It tastes like chemical.
Yeah.
It just tastes like chemical. And it tastes like carbonation.
Yeah.
Which you don't want the flavor of carbonation. That's why you want the syrup.
I think it's why I'm not a big drinker is because everything that you've ever had, like as far as alcohol, they're like, oh, it's, this is strawberry vodka. It doesn't taste like strawberry. No. It tastes like dirty old, water.
Yeah.
And then they include, a little bit of a strawberry essence to it.
It tastes like damage incoming. Right?
Yes, right? Exactly. And I think that's the same. Like, oh, have you tried watermelon Waterloo carbonated water? And I'm like, no.
This will make you think less.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, that's why it tastes like that. Then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No.
Which is another reason why I just don't get along with everyone. Now, the good thing is that Diet Coke's almost everywhere. Although I have noticed that weird alliances are being made left and right. So, for example, Jill and I were flying out. What airport were we in? We are flying out of LaGuardia. Okay, so coming back from New York, flying out of LaGuardia. Was it LaGuardia? No. I'm sorry. It was Newark, okay. Newark Airport, and that airport was only Pepsi products. So even restaurants that have a deal with Coke were Pepsi products inside of the airport. And that bummed me out big time because I walked all over the place trying to find a Diet Coke.
Wild.
And because of the TSA not allowing me to bring more than 3 ounces in, should have just brought a little shooter of Diet Coke just so I could get that taste. And anyone who says that they can't taste the difference is a dirty liar.
Yeah.
And I'm sick and tired of your filthy, disgusting lies. I wish that you would just realize that you're not cool. It doesn't make you a better person in any way, shape, or form. Certainly doesn't make you more interesting. And we all secretly go out without you on a regular basis. And we talk about you behind your back, Randy. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I do not own any soda-related clothing, and I'm going to keep it that way.